Greg, we got to keep going with this tech trends report. I feel like every conversation we have, we are scratching the surface, which is kind of the point. We don't want to reveal all the spicy details, and we encourage everyone to check it out on UPSTACK.com. But touching on topics like cybersecurity, and as part of that, inevitably AI comes up, but not the hype cycle. Maybe the hype cycle is over. Maybe AI, it's the applicability is broad enough. We can retire the hype cycle. When we look at the trends report, though, Greg, certainly security ranked first. Maybe not surprisingly. I have to say, I also was not surprised at what came in a very, very close second on the report, according to our technology experts. Go ahead.
CX, perhaps?
CX, also known as customer experience, which for some, they might be familiar with technologies, but not realize it's now part of this greater customer experience ecosystem, something we've seen many of our customers, many of our clients benefit from tremendously and truly transforming the way their businesses operate and, most importantly, engage with their end customers. So as we always know, we could try, but we can't carry on this conversation ourselves. So not only do we have a guest, we have two guests today. Bring in our own Ed Degenhart, UPSTACK Managing Director, who brings with him over 20 years of industry experience, helping customers solve those very tough problems, leveraging technology and more leveraging customer experience solutions to solve those challenges those businesses face. And then we're also very excited to welcome one of our old friends, Andrew Pryfogle, the legend himself, founder and CEO of CX Effect. CX Effect, for those who aren't aware, an outfitter that prepares companies for transformative customer experience. And that is, talk about tip of the iceberg. This is going to be an awesome conversation. Andrew, many of you may know, be familiar with you from your time at the TSD Intelisys. I know you headed up the Cloud Solutions organization over there. But thank you so much for being with us, both of you.
Good to be here. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
We could talk about a range of topics, but when you have Andrew Pryfogle and Ed Degenhart on, we got to start with CX, and the people want to hear. We touch on a number of areas within CX in the trends report. Automation was first. And that's, I can't say I'm surprised. And Andrew, in all of our conversations and what we've been working together, the solutions we've been working together to deliver to our customers, automation is playing more and more of a role, maybe for some organizations that don't realize the value it can provide.
Yeah, no doubt. I'd say to you, Alex, probably a really important question is to ask ourselves why automation came in so high, right? Why automation? What's driving the interest around that? And it's not just because it's the latest whiz bang technology that gets people excited, the shiny thing that is the nice to have. I really believe, and I'm hearing this from customers all over the country right now, that automation is becoming a strategic imperative for them to solve the fundamental issue, which is a labor problem. For years, as brands built out their customer experience strategy, as they grew the company, they would exponentially grow their people in the contact center and salespeople and support people to meet that growing demand. And there's been a few developments that have happened over the past number of years, really accelerated by COVID, of course, which is it's become increasingly difficult to hire those people. I can't find them. I can't hire them. If I do hire them, I can't retain them. Churn rates are incredibly high in most companies right now. It's not uncommon that we deal with customers that have 50, 60, 70% annual churn rates. Imagine that, right? Meaning losing half of your employees every year. And so if I can't solve the labor problem as like I used to be able to, then I'm forced into a position where I have to look at things like automation, because the demand on me continuing to provide services, continuing to grow revenue, continuing to support my customers, that demand, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And when leadership in the business says to me as a CX leader, hey, we're gonna grow revenues exponentially over the next year, but we need to do it at a lower cost to support, a lower cost to sale. And with fewer people, go figure that out. And that's the monster task that so many CX leaders are faced with right now. And it's why automation is becoming such an important thing.
I guess, question for the group, because we have a quorum here today. How quickly are we seeing companies adopt automation when it comes to their CX posture or profile?
I think if you look at the technology, RPA, robotic process automation, the underpinning technology originally was UPath, and others have evolved to bring it on. The adoption rate was amazing because it allowed the tech to handle repeatable tasks, offsetting the labor requirement in answering phone calls and processing information. And it was amazing to see how that spread like wildfire through our customers.
Are there particular verticals where automation has had more success? Like I can see the difference in healthcare and finance, for instance. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Those are our top three verticals that we support today. You mentioned two of them, healthcare and finance are big ones. And right up there is also online retail. So any customer that has an online retail brand, that e-com space is blowing up around automation as well.
Are there differences in how they approach automation based on the vertical, right? Because obviously healthcare has HIPAA compliance, finance has obviously some added layers of security. Yep. Do you see any are there products specific to those verticals, or is there more generalized services that you can then fine tune?
Sure. It's a great question. And let's take some examples of that, Greg. In a highly regulatory environment with healthcare and finance in particular, the adoption of automation is more complicated, right? I need to have humans in the loop to validate I'm talking to the right person, that I'm talking to. I'm protecting information. I'm not just a bot's not just willy-nilly sending PII to anybody out there. So you have to put in the protections around that. The good news is that the solutions that we're seeing get adopted in that space have really thought that through. And in fact, I would argue that many of the more innovative solutions out there on the front end automation side of the house are doing a better job of protecting customer data, customer information, better than a team of humans, certainly. Just by definition, a team of humans can be a bit of a sieve, if you will, right, in the wrong situation. So that front end automation is what's really, really key, and that's the number one thing that has to be solved for if a company is going to leverage automation to drive down labor cost, which is and to solve their labor problem, right? They have to be able to automate, but they have to do it in a really good way. I'm moving right now. My house. I'm moving from California to Western Massachusetts. Movers show up on January 21st. I was told it's a really mild time of the year to move to the Northeast, so I'm looking forward to some nice weather. Should be great.
It should include some gloves and a scarf with your.
Yeah, we'll send you some fur-lined boots as a welcome gift.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. But what struck me is I started this process yesterday of having my internet and cable service moved from my old house to my new house, and between multiple calls yesterday and navigating through an online experience, and then an hour and a half call this morning at 6 a.m. Pacific time, I finally got my new service, ordered up and in place, and it was incredibly frustrating. But what's interesting about it is the company. I won't mention their name unless you want me to. I won't. It's okay. We don't
Alex welcomes shameless plugs.
We can guess. As long as they're not, they might be the sponsor of this episode for all we know.
They might be, and so we'll be nice to them, right? Because important to note that I'm not changing from the provider, because when it's actually installed and working, I'm a happy camper, right? It's the installing piece that's challenging. But they've taken a lot of steps to try to automate this example. I can go online, I can click on a button, I'm moving, it asks me a bunch of questions, and in theory that works great. And if I could do that soup to nuts with a seamless experience, with removing all the friction, I'm good. But no, that's, more often than not as consumers, we're experiencing automation solutions that result in us just getting more and more frustrated. Am I right? Where within minutes we're yelling into the phone, representative.
Zero.
And yeah, it's zero. We're doing anything we can to try to get around that automation solution because it's not resolving my issue and it's just frustrating me. So this has evolved a lot, guys, and I think where what's really important is for companies that are thinking about how do I automate more and more of my customer experience. They got to be thinking about what I call delightful automation, right? What are the solutions in place that you've really designed right and tested and continue to test and validate that it's actually improving the experience, not complicating the experience, right? If it can save me a bunch of dollars on the back end, but I'm pissing customers off at the same time, that's not a win. That makes no sense at all, right? And there are brands out there whose entire reputation is now being impacted by their poor attempts to automate the experience. So it's a bit of a minefield. You got to do it right.
There's kind of an overlay to this conversation. Yes, customer experience, and we're working to define that for the listener. But the benefit it can have for your business by delivering a premium experience, a turnkey experience a customer maybe they expect, or they're delighted to find it exceeds what they expected, and the tremendous benefit that can have to a company from talk about things like NPS score, but customer for life, customer retention. If you're able to move your services seamlessly, even if that company is using automation and you're not interacting with a human per se, you're probably more likely to recommend them to a friend or stick with them when you decide to move to warmer climates after freezing for the following winters. But I feel like that's at play here. Point I was trying to make, you talk about labor constraints for various different reasons in companies having to make up that deficit. So it's not personnel replacement or human capital replacement, to use a scary term. There's a need here that you're unable to find people to do it. There's solutions. You can leverage technology not only to fill those gaps, but perhaps even provide a more optimal solution.
So how is this impacting the international markets? I'm super, and again, this may be off topic a bit, but I'm curious because historically we've always outsourced, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's the Philippines or India. I mean, this must be at some level hurting their markets because these guys aren't collecting that revenue anymore, right? They're being replaced essentially with technology.
Now, Greg, I think it's insightful. I think earlier last year in 2023, ICMI came out with a report that predicted that 2023 would represent the very first year where global contact center seats have gone down. The number of global contact center seats have gone down. Why is that, right? If I'm a BPO operating in the Philippines or in India or Central America, wherever, there's a lot of pressure. There's certainly an increasing interest in people outsourcing labor because they're finding it so difficult to solve that problem themselves. But in all actuality, your legacy BPOs, the companies that are doing that work, are struggling with the same exact issues around labor, right? So they're trying to solve it, but even at scale. So I think it's an interesting thing. Every BPO that I talk to, and we talk with a bunch, every one of them are trying to figure out their automation strategies, just like every enterprise CX leader is trying to do the same, because that's where this is headed. And if I can't solve for that, it's just gonna create a bigger and bigger gap. If I don't have the people or the technology to satisfy my end customers' requirements, then my customer sat, my NPS, it suffers, right? Other brands that have figured it out, they beat me. My sales start to go down. And I think that's it's the challenge, but it's also the opportunity, because I think a lot of CX leaders that I work with, for decades, they've been kind of categorized in this in the overall corporate budget as a cost item in the business. It's a cost center for the company, right? This technology is now enabling many of these people to pivot their organizations into profit centers for the company. And if I'm a CIO, or if I'm a VP of customer experience, whatever, and I'm trying to fight for budget dollars, and I'm trying to figure out how do I provide a better outcome for my business. And now I can make the argument that these investments are actually going to increase sales, not just drive cost out. It can do that for sure, but actually increase sales. That make money argument puts them in a far better position in the C-suite. You agree? I mean, if I can convince C-level that these investments are going to drive increased revenues, increased profitability, suddenly the entire conversation changes.
Is that also data collection, or is it just increased revenues?
What do you mean by that?
So basically, it becomes less of a cost center, more of a profit center, which is interesting. But I think when you're automating something, you have the ability to collect data, right? As
Oh,
opposed
sure.
to human intervention. You can record phone calls, right? But it's really hard to extrapolate out that data. But
Yeah,
when
yeah.
it's in an environment when you're dealing with technology, there may be an opportunity to collect that data, harness it to be better, not just internally, but
Oh,
externally.
yeah. Unprecedented amount of insights that business leaders have today because of this technology. And we talk a lot about automation on the front end, calls coming in. I'm automating a voice call or a text or an SMS, a chat, an email. That's all well and good. But how about on the back end? How do I leverage automation to help my agents be radically more efficient? And how do I also use that same technology to collect what you're talking about, all that data, everyone, ingesting 100% of the interactions, and then letting AI decipher what are my customers telling me? What are the biggest call drivers? What are the issues that we're facing? Where are the opportunities for improvement? And for all that data, not just to be, hey, here's a bunch of data, have at it, but here's actionable data with very specific actions that you can take to go improve the business. You can do that at an unprecedented level today. And every single customer out there that is interfacing with customers, inbound, outbound, through whatever channel, they need to be thinking about how they improve their data insights. It's a remarkable advantage if you invest there today.
We obviously help customers deal with the pace of change in technology as things transition from conversational AI to generative AI. How do you help customers deal with the overwhelming choices? So there's obviously a myriad of tech and suppliers that do a ton of different things around the CX space, gamification, fractional labor. How do you illustrate for a customer all those capabilities that are available to them so that they can make conscious decisions about that?
Yeah. The amount of options out there right now, I think I read something recently that there were some over 4,000 new AI startups in the past 12 months globally. Over 4,000. That's an insane number, right? If I'm a business leader in a company and I'm trying to figure out, okay, of all this technology, what matters to me? Frankly, over the past year, we've seen it kind of paralyze customers, frankly, more than enabling them to move forward. Right? They're afraid to make a decision, the wrong decision. There's so much going on, and at the pace of innovation, to what you mentioned, Ed, it's really unprecedented. The technology that I learned about 6 months ago that I'm been going through this process of implementing into my business, just 6 months later, there's a better mousetrap already, right? And so how do I handle that? I think what's important is as we coach customers on this journey, things before something is revolutionary, it is evolutionary. And what that means for me is these are small steps, right? Don't try to go transform your entire CX strategy overnight. We're working with companies a lot today, which are what are the easy wins for you? What are the simple things that we can get implemented quickly that can start to drive significant value to the business? And if you do enough of those in those evolutionary steps that you take, before you know it, you've transformed your business. But to start off with, all right, I'm going to tackle this big hairy thing called CX transformation, digital transformation. That's overwhelming, and if you overlay on top of that the pace of change, it's almost an impossible thing to do. You got to start with those simple wins, and that's where we help customers focus.
AI, as we know, comes up in every conversation, including many conversations here. Ed, I know as you engage with customers, Andrew, you as well. It's what's my AI strategy? Where do you see where do you see AI having application in your business? It's actually within CX where it's probably the most applicability.
Yeah.
Ed, you mentioned conversational AI. Turns out conversational AI, conversational voice AI, which is really interesting, certainly resonated and it showed up on the list of trends under CX. Andrew, can you just help the audience understand, if they're unfamiliar, conversational AI more broadly and voice specifically? Because this is an interesting nuance on the technology.
Yeah, for sure. This is really where the power of large language models come in, guys, because the technology is there. Every one of us have jumped on ChatGPT, given it a problem to solve. I use it for Excel a lot. I ask it to build a formula for me. That's been great. And it has this uncanny ability to immediately come back with this well thought out answer in most cases, right? Because it's listening to not just words, but the intent and the spirit of it, and it knows how, just inherently how it's built to be able to gather information to quickly be able to provide that answer and that insight back, right? It can almost anticipate what it is that I'm trying to do before I even tell it exactly what I'm trying to do. And so if I can apply that same large language model capability into every single one of my customer interactions in my business, I can learn a tremendous amount about what's going on. Suppose for a moment you knew immediately, within minutes, that you were getting a flood of inbound calls because of a product issue that was causing, say, a safety problem with customers. Um, in a traditional world, how would I normally hear that? I'd hear that from people on a contact center floor who started to get a bunch of phone calls, and they raise their hand and they try to get the attention of a supervisor, who then hears that, and maybe they're hearing it from a couple of different places, and they shoot an email off. And I mean, you know where this is going. It takes time and hours before it gets to somebody that can take action. But that could be an incredibly urgent problem. I would imagine Alaska Airlines in the past couple of days they didn't want to have 3-4 days pass before they knew that doors were falling off their airplanes mid-flight, right? They would want to know that insight within seconds. And that's what conversational AI is enabling brands to do. It's about the speed of information and the ability to quickly act. And that ability is far better and more robust than it's ever been before, right? That's a really key thing. I think the other piece is that how do I apply that same exact engine to all the different ways we want to communicate? We think of conversational AI and we tend to think immediately about voice, right? Someone's speaking, I want to be able to analyze what they're saying at scale. I prefer to chat when I'm dealing with support. How about chat? Can you analyze that? Can you analyze my text messages? Can you analyze my social posts, where I'm voicing to the world how frustrated I am with an internet provider that is, making it really difficult for me to move, right? Something like that. Can I analyze every single one of those touch points and be able to bring all that together into one language model that can then drive business insights that'll enable me to make very quick decisions, right? That's the power. That's the power of conversational AI.
So let's go back to your last comment prior to this. And you said there's so many AI initiatives out there, it's overwhelming, right? And you
Yeah.
said that you should really focus on, the pillars that are important
Yeah.
to your business. I have to believe that there's a layer of importance associated to innovation, right? And that
Yeah.
maybe 90% of your time is on the pillars, and 10% should always be in that innovation lab, right? Those compelling technologies that come along quick that give you the
Sure.
competitive edge. Talk a little bit about that. How important is that, and not just focused on the core?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. I think forward-thinking brands out there are making big investments and making sure there's a senior leader in the business that's keeping their finger on that pulse. They have to, right? I think they're vulnerable if they don't. I talked with a guy named Art Weston recently, a couple months ago. He works for a large national bank. He walked up to me at a conference that I was speaking at and introduced himself as an AI futurist. and which was really interesting. They went on to say some really crazy things and provocative things, some of which I agreed with, some of a bit of a head scratcher. But here's the interesting point: you have a large national bank that's paying this guy to go sit in an office in a dark room and think up these thoughts, right? Why is that? Why is that? Because they understand that we can't be in a reactive mode here. We have to get out in front of this. We have to have really smart people thinking ahead of this. I think in the UPSTACK community, I think that's one of the values that partners can provide, right? Companies that haven't yet made that investment, haven't yet figured out who that owner is of kind of the future of technology in that business, lean on those trusted advisors to help kind of carve that path for you. We work with those partners every day and their customers to kind of map that out and help them keep a finger on that pulse. We interface with customers all the time where we're like, hey, I want you to spend 30 minutes looking at this new technology. I want to get your feedback on this. And let's think about how this plays into our broader strategy for your business, right? I think it's really important for brands that want to stay ahead of the game to invest there and make sure that they're aware of what's going on.
Contact center feels like it's at the core of the greater CX ecosystem. Some might think contact center as its own part of the larger technology stack, and as we've come to learn, it's actually, again, part of CX more broadly with many of the solutions and technologies we've been talking about today. CCaaS, as it's also known, has certainly undergone its own evolution. Ed, I'm curious, as you've engaged with customers, how have you seen that technology change and the enhanced value it's been able to provide customers?
Yeah, I think it's definitely evolved. I also know that cost has come down. Zoom has obviously entered the landscape, and it's it's driving costs down. But the integration of the technologies, the AI elements, I think, are making it more efficient and driving that labor cost down. It really kind of maps back to what Andrew said: is the efficiency to handle or solve the problem in advance of the person picking up as an agent. I think is the evolution, and that's really where we're helping customers position the service. And one of our customers, they were taking all the scheduling appointments for vision eye exams at hundreds of different retail outlets, and we help them with conversational AI and integration to their CCaaS platform, contact center platform, to essentially coordinate all those appointments in an automated fashion without ever having to speak to an agent. So it immensely solved the frustration of the customers, and it also saved the customer a lot of time.
So Ed, I got one for you. Zoom, obviously, to me, a new company, right? They really took off during COVID. They're still viewed as a pure play to me, meaning when you think Zoom, you think video conferencing. You don't really look at the ancillary products you're trying to push. And then you get a company like Microsoft, who launches Copilot across their platform, and then you see Teams and Outlook and all these things evolve into this thing, right? This amazing thing.
Sure.
And it puts Zoom in a position where they don't have really anything to grab onto, right? And then the companies that historically were born into a Google, right, because they're young and not a Microsoft, and tend to lean towards Zoom or Google, are now starting to say, "Wow, should I be on Microsoft?" Like, how do you see these vendors battling this out, and what do you think the outcome's going to look like?
Yeah, I think obviously Zoom has a tremendous advantage of pandemic. It's on almost everybody's desktop, right? So I think they're positioned well as being a technology that's already been decided on as a component. I do agree that Microsoft's expansive tools overlaid with their AI is going to create an impact, but Zoom seems to be responding, developing their own CCaaS platform. They did make a bid to acquire Five9, but detoured that and went on to build their own platform. So I think they'll be a competitive player for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd echo that. I think I'll tell you what I've been really impressed with around Zoom. And I think you're right. The initial inclination is that we think of them as the that's where I do my video calls, right? And that's where I live on meetings now, which is fine. but guys, holy cow, the money that they've invested in unified communications and now in cloud contact center is remarkable. Their level of their pace of development around feature and functionality in their contact center platform has been really nothing short of mind-boggling. I mean, they've closed the gap between what used to be maybe 70% of the key features and capabilities with, compared to the big contact center platforms out there, the nice CX1s and Five9 and Genesys and TalkDesk and such. They've closed that gap almost all the way. It's really been interesting to watch. So I think the contact center space is very disruptive right now. You're absolutely right. Microsoft is one of the biggest reasons for that level of disruption, and it's changing that entire landscape. But I think Zoom is an equal partner in that. I think Zoom drives a tremendous amount of activity around this right now.
I'm going to challenge you on that.
Yeah.
You know a hell of a lot more about this space than I do, but I read the news or I listen to the news. Large language models, learning, inferencing, all this stuff takes time. And
Yep.
what the big advantage is time, right? Who started this first? Where does this evolve to? And if you look at Copilot, early days with, AI, right? They're years ahead of the game. So how do you see Zoom even while building this mass, catching up to that language, right? And that learning?
Yeah, I think a variety of ways. I would not underestimate Zoom's existing R&D bench. They've already invested huge dollars in this space, right? They're not so. I would suggest to you that they are far closer than what you might think. The other is Zoom's got a ton of cash. And they're sitting on a war chest where they're making key acquisitions and will continue to acquire really innovative technologies that help close that gap even faster. The agility is a huge advantage. And Microsoft, I'm a big fan, but Microsoft has never been like at the tip of the spear of this stuff. They've always been a fast follower. And now they've got a tremendous amount of heft behind them and a lot of credibility, right? But they're the ones that saw what OpenAI was doing that at the tip of the spear, if you will, and said, "Yeah, we got to go invest in that," and they made a huge bet. And I would say that they'll continue. That's kind of been their history. They embrace new technologies every day, but they're not necessarily the ones out there creating those new technologies from scratch, right? They're looking for innovators out there that they can partner with, that they can acquire, that they can bring into their family. And Zoom perhaps might even be one of those, right? Who knows? The level of innovation around Zoom has been really impressive to me. They're a legit player in this space.
There's a hot take. Hey now.
Yeah.
I have one more final comment if we still have the time, Alex.
Yeah,
we're over time, but and then I have one more point to bring up after you. Go for it.
I'm more curious than anything, right? Because again, you go back to that pure play. Even though they are adopting and acquiring, you still have a situation where companies like Microsoft, larger companies, can just give it away, right? Just like Google.
Yeah.
Even though Google's platform isn't great, right? Their meeting platform, but you just give it away. And I think that challenges Zoom's core business, especially when you go into Copilot and you type in, a topic within your organization, and you can see that across multiple platforms, right? And be able to take that and really do something with it. Yeah.
Well, I'd say two things about that. You're right. Microsoft has the flexibility of being extremely disruptive around pricing, right? They can defer margin for a very, very long time as they kind of change an industry, and they've done that many times, right? But I don't know about you. I mean, I'm a Teams shop. My whole company, we use Teams every day, right? And I love it. It's great. But if I have like a mission critical conference call, and I've got 4, 5, 6 people that I need to have on that call, I'm using Zoom every time. That's me. I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm using Zoom every time for that call. Yeah. Here's the other interesting thing that we don't talk enough about, because I think the other player in the UCaaS CCaaS space has been quieter, but they're doing some really interesting things, and that's Google. And that comes back to your point about Microsoft being able to give it away. Think about what Google's been doing for the past 20 years. The past 20 years, every elementary and high school student on the planet has had access to Google technology for free. They've been giving Chromebooks out and giving Google technology in the browser, the Chrome browser, and all that technology to all these students for nothing. Well, those students are now leading businesses, right? They're now growing companies. These are the next innovators. Where do they tend to gravitate? They're going to gravitate towards what they know. Google has a significant advantage in that space, and it creates a really interesting competitive environment for Microsoft for sure.
They do, and it's funny. Today was the day that it came up on a call that a Google shop, because of the younger generation, right? Startup, probably 6-7 years old, was a Google shop since inception because of the younger generation, has just come out of a Microsoft presentation and has decided that they want to take a hard look at transitioning. So it's interesting.
It happens. It happens.
I'm excited to see the evolution.
Speaking of evolution, I offer this as an endpoint. I mean, we would love for the conversation to go on. It certainly could. Going back to CCaaS and more specifically, the evolution of the contact center. I mean, so many customers, so many businesses out there first onboarded their CCaaS solution many years ago. And there have been incredible advancements in that technology specifically, many of which through the other technologies we've discussed today. Automation opportunities, conversational AI, kind of this ability to leverage CCaaS from an omni-channel standpoint, which that popped in our survey. That definitely popped. Ed, Andrew, as we talk to the end customer, are we seeing these customers proactively looking to explore omni-channel opportunities? Or is it, I have a contact center, I'm good to go, or I don't want anything new? I'm curious what those conversations look like or sound like.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think it's one, is it solving for your business problems today as is, and what are your goals in the next frontier? Like what bolt-on technologies or capabilities are you adapting to the CCaaS platform? And so, a lot of the discussions, again, roll back, right, to conversational AI, to integrations, to the other elements. And I like to leverage Andrew in some of those discussions because he does a great job with Art of the Possible, which is to illustrate for customers a lot of things that are possible just around the CCaaS elements and all the bolt-on technologies that can make it more efficient.
My take on omnichannel, Alex, is interesting. We started talking about that term maybe 10 years ago now, and it was all about how do I equip a single agent to be able to interact across all these different channels, whether it be voice or SMS or chat or email. And through that process, a lot of brands adopted this idea of call avoidance more than anything else, right? I'm gonna light up these other channels so that you don't have to call me. Because every time as one guy that Ed and I know really well that runs a support team, a guy named Neely, used to say that I lose money every time my phone rings, right? Because he's in a support role. This is all they're doing is providing support. And if you call me, I'm losing money. Well, a lot of brands adopted that concept that, hey, I want to avoid calls at all costs. And if I have all these different channels, they can communicate with me, and I can support that at a cheaper level. Then great, let's do that, right? And omni-channel became the thing. Well, I would say with AI and how that's changing that entire conversation is now make it stupid easy for consumers to reach you on whatever channel they want to reach you on, right? And leverage AI to drive down the cost of support or the cost of acquisition, because you can now, because it's evolved to that mature level enough where you can. And so the companies that hide their phone numbers on their websites, I would push back on them, and I'd start saying, hey, make it easy for your customers to reach you. That doesn't necessarily mean that every live interaction is being handled by a live human. Not anymore, right? And that's where all that's converging, and I think that's opening up massive opportunity for customers.
Yeah, and this goes back to automation freeing up the humans, the people on your staff to hire those higher level tasks. The lower level tasks, just there's technology can be leveraged just to take care of those in a very seamless way.
No doubt.
Gentlemen, we could go on. I know for a fact we could go on.
I've cleared my
we will. Well, now that you're no longer on the phone with the cable provider, thankfully, but rest assured, this conversation will continue given how rapidly CX is changing as part of the larger technology stack. So I know I speak on behalf of Greg. We very much look forward to having that conversation and having you both be a part of it. But for now, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.